No one gets left behind. Caleb Walker mutters under his breath as he slows his pickup truck on the narrow dirt lane cutting through the Kansas farmland, the night thick with smoke and the smell of burning hay. A low fog curls around the wheel wells, blending with the amber glow spilling from the burning barn ahead, where the roof sags dangerously, beams glowing red-hot against the dark sky. Ranger, a German shepherd with a sable coat and eyes reflecting the flames like molten gold, stands resolute at the barn door, fur matted from smoke and moisture, his body stiff yet defiant. Caleb jumps from the truck, boots crunching on wet gravel and charred straw, a gust of wind carrying heat and the sharp scent of scorched wood into his face. He pulls his jacket tighter, the familiar weight of his dog tags brushing against his chest, a reminder of missions past and friends lost in fire and smoke. The barn shakes with a groan as a section of the roof shifts, embers drifting downward in lazy arcs. Caleb raises his hand, calling out softly, "Ranger, you need to come with me." The dog tilts his head, ears pricked, but he doesn't move. Caleb notices the tension in Ranger's stance, the subtle flick of his tail, the way he shifts his weight toward the shadows inside, eyes fixed not on escape, but on the floorboards beneath the flickering light. Rain begins to spatter against the old metal siding, hissing as it meets the flames, but Ranger remains unmoved, a silent guardian anchored to a promise. Caleb takes a measured step forward, the soles of his boots slipping slightly on wet ash, heart hammering as he scans the barn's entrance. Through the haze, he glimpses shapes beneath a tangle of hay, a slight rustle, a soft whimper. Caleb's chest tightens. He kneels, voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline. "I've got you. All of you." Ranger's amber eyes flicker to him once, a glimmer of recognition, before snapping back to the little forms huddled beneath the smoldering hay. Caleb edges closer, the heat rolling off the barn in waves, mingling with the scent of damp earth and charred timber, and he sees them clearly now. For tiny German shepherd pups, nearly hidden, their fur wet and dusted with ash, one small whine breaking through the crackle of fire. Ranger's stance softens ever so slightly, but still he does not leave, his gaze sweeping protectively over the pups, as if daring the flames to take them before him. Caleb swallows hard, adjusting the grip on his flashlight, its beam cutting through the smoke and casting elongated shadows across the warped boards, and steps onto the threshold, mindful of the unstable footing. He moves deliberately, each footfall measured, careful not to trigger a collapse, all while murmuring reassurances to Ranger and the pups in tones low and calming. Ranger shifts, brushing against Caleb's legs, a silent nudge, guiding him deeper. The floor creaks and groans, but Caleb follows the signal, leaning low, arms ready to scoop up any of the fragile forms, and catches the smallest pup as it shivers violently, its amber eyes wide with fear. Caleb cradles it against his chest, the heat from the flames licked away by the sudden downpour, while Ranger nudges each of the remaining pups toward him, circling protectively, ears swiveling at every sound. Sparks drift past, landing on damp straw and sizzling, but the barn is momentarily frozen in the glow of the flashlight and the golden reflection of Ranger's unwavering eyes. Caleb steps backward carefully, the pups secure, his chest rising and falling with deliberate breaths, and Ranger finally follows, just a step behind, pausing to glance back at the fiery glow that still dances across the walls. Caleb murmurs softly, "It's okay, buddy. We're getting everyone out." Ranger hesitates one final heartbeat, then trots into the open night, nose forward, alert and watchful, ensuring not a single pup is left behind. The rain slicks Caleb's jacket, the night air filled with the acrid sweetness of burned hay and the cool scent of earth, and he allows himself a moment to glance at Ranger, seeing the quiet pride and relentless loyalty in his companion's posture. The barn is behind them, a blaze contained for now by the wet grass and wind, but the memory of the night lingers, the heat, the smell, the courage of a dog who refused to abandon those smaller than himself. Caleb feels the weight of it in his chest, the quiet reverence for the instinct that guided Ranger, and as he carries the last pup into the awaiting warmth of his truck, he whispers again, "No one gets left behind." Caleb shuts the truck door with his shoulder and places the last puppy on the old wool blanket spread across the passenger seat. The same blanket he keeps folded behind the bench for cold mornings and roadside trouble. The pups are small enough to fit against one another like a single trembling heartbeat, their noses wet, their eyes not fully steady, their bodies breathing in uneven little pulls. Ranger climbs in after them without being told, moving slowly now, as if the strength that held him upright inside the barn had been borrowed from somewhere beyond the reach of muscle and bone. He lowers himself across the floorboard, placing his body between the puppies and the open door, still guarding them even though the danger is behind them. Caleb pauses with one hand on the frame of the truck. Rain runs from the brim of his cap and down the weathered lines of his face. For a moment, he cannot move. The burning barn throws orange light across the side of the pickup, and in that light, Ranger looks less like a stray and more like a soldier at the end of a long watch, tired but unwilling to surrender his post. Caleb knows that look. He has seen it in men who kept standing because someone else needed them to stand. He has worn it himself on nights he never talks about. A soft whimper rises from the blanket, and Ranger answers with a low breath, not a bark, not a growl, just a sound full of exhausted comfort. Caleb reaches in and rests 2 fingers against the dog's neck, feeling the fast pulse beneath the smoke-damp fur. "You did good," he says, his voice rough. Ranger does not look at him. His eyes stay on the puppies. Caleb starts the engine, and the truck coughs once before settling into a steady rumble. The headlights cut through the rain, lighting the dirt road ahead in pale yellow bars. Behind him, the barn continues to crackle under the storm, but the flames have begun to shrink where the rain falls hardest. Caleb grabs his radio from the dash and calls the county dispatcher, reporting the fire, the location, and the animals found inside. His words are calm, clipped, practiced, but his hands are not calm. They tighten around the steering wheel as he turns the truck toward town, tires sliding in the mud before catching the gravel. The nearest veterinary clinic is 12 miles away, in a small brick building beside a feed store on the edge of Miller's Creek. Caleb knows the place. Everyone within 30 miles knows it. Carter Animal Care has saved farm dogs, barn cats, injured horses, and once, according to local legend, a raccoon that had wandered into the wrong church basement during a Sunday breakfast. Dr. Emily Carter keeps the porch light on after hours. Caleb prays she kept it on tonight. The road unspools in front of him, black and wet, bordered by cornfields that whisper under the rain. In the cab, the air smells of smoke, wet fur, old leather, and fear slowly giving way to warmth. Caleb turns the heater higher, angling the vents toward the floorboard. Ranger lifts his head once, ears moving at the soft cries beneath the blanket. The smallest pup, the one Caleb had pulled from the farthest corner, nudges blindly against its siblings and lets out a thin sound that cuts straight through him. It is not loud. It is barely there. But to Caleb, it sounds like a question. Why were we left there? He glances down, then back to the road. "I know," he whispers, though he does not. Not yet. A mile outside town, lightning flashes over the fields, turning every fence post white for one breath. In that sudden light, something on Ranger's collar catches Caleb's eye. He had missed it in the smoke. A small metal tag hangs beneath a strip of burned leather, half hidden in the thick fur at the dog's throat. It is not a county license. It is not the kind of tag a family buys at a pet store. It is dull, scratched, and shaped like something Caleb has not seen in years without feeling a quiet ache in his ribs. He reaches down carefully at the next stop sign, fingers brushing the tag. Ranger stiffens, but does not pull away. Caleb turns the metal toward the dashboard light. The letters are worn, but not gone. Read. K9 unit. The world inside the truck seems to go silent, even with rain hammering the roof and the engine idling beneath him. Caleb stops breathing for a second. Reed is not just a name. Reed is a door he keeps locked. Corporal Mason Reed, the man who used to laugh too loudly in quiet rooms, the man who carried extra socks for everyone, the man who once said dogs were the only creatures honest enough for war and gentle enough for home. Mason, who did not make it out of the smoke 5 years ago. Caleb's hand falls away from the tag, as if it has burned him. Ranger watches him now, amber eyes lifted, steady and sad, as if he has been waiting all this time for Caleb to understand. The puppies stir beneath the blanket. The rain keeps falling, and Caleb, who thought he had pulled a stranger from a burning barn, realizes he may have just found the last living piece of the friend he could not bring home. The rain continues to fall in gentle sheets over the truck as Caleb carefully drives the last 5 miles to the veterinary clinic, the road glistening and slick beneath the tires. Inside the cab, the small forms of the pups press against one another, trembling but alive, while Ranger remains alert at Caleb's feet, ears swiveling toward every sound outside, tail tucked slightly but rigid, guarding his family. Caleb glances at the rearview mirror, seeing the barn's glow disappear behind the trees, the smoke dissipating into the night sky, and he lets out a slow breath, feeling the weight of the past 5 years pressing against him, the echo of Mason Reed's voice lingering in the quiet rain. As he turns onto the side street where the clinic sits, a soft glow from the porch light spills across the wet pavement, a welcome beacon against the stormy night. The tires crunch over the gravel as he pulls to a stop, leaving space for Ranger and the pups to climb out carefully. Caleb reaches down and gently lifts the first pup from the blanket, careful of its wet and fragile body, and sets it on the damp concrete beside him. The little dog shivers against the rain, nose flicking as it takes in the new scent of home and safety. Ranger rises and moves forward, chest low, eyes never leaving the doorway of the clinic, as if ensuring that every step is watched, every move deliberate, every pup accounted for. Caleb gathers the remaining pups, one by one, feeling their tiny hearts thump against his palms, and carries them toward the open door, where Emily Carter appears immediately, her hands covered in gloves and her eyes wide with a mixture of concern and relief. The smell of antiseptic and warm hay greets them inside, and Caleb sets each pup onto a prepared warming pad while Ranger hesitates at the threshold, glancing toward Caleb before moving inside to circle the group, still protective. Emily kneels beside the first pup, her gloved hands assessing its breathing, warming its paws with practiced care, while Caleb watches Ranger, noting the subtle rise and fall of his chest, the flick of his ears toward every small whimper and shuffle of the pups. The atmosphere in the clinic is calm but electric, the storm outside muffled, and yet every heartbeat seems amplified in the quiet room. Caleb steps closer, brushing his fingers gently along Ranger's shoulder, feeling the heat from the dog's body, sensing the deep loyalty radiating in silent waves, the weight of survival and memory pressing against his chest. The puppies begin to quiet, nesting together on the pads, small movements and sighs signaling that they are beginning to relax, beginning to trust. Ranger sits down near the warmest pad, alert but less tense, his amber eyes flicking between Caleb and the pups, as if counting, confirming, ensuring nothing is left undone. Emily looks up, meeting Caleb's gaze, and nods, the subtle motion carrying the weight of understanding, of shared relief, of empathy for the creatures that have just endured so much. Caleb reaches down to smooth the fur along Ranger's neck, the coarse strands wet and slightly scorched at the tips, and whispers quietly, "You did not fail, old friend." Ranger tilts his head slightly, eyes catching the soft light of the clinic, reflecting trust, recognition, and the faint memory of all that was lost and all that was saved. Outside, the rain continues, falling in rhythmic taps against the windows, washing the world clean, and inside, Caleb, Ranger, and the pups settle into the warmth and safety of the clinic, a fragile but unbroken family bound together by loyalty, courage, and the quiet miracles that sometimes arrive on 4 paws. Emily Carter works without raising her voice, and somehow that makes the room feel steadier. She moves from one puppy to the next with a small towel warmed under the heat lamp, checking paws, noses, breathing, and the tiny rhythm of each chest while the rain taps gently against the clinic windows. Caleb stands near the exam table with his arms folded tight, not because he is cold, but because he does not know what else to do with his hands. He has held rifles, radios, steering wheels, folded flags, and goodbye letters. But watching 4 puppies fight their way into warmth makes him feel helpless in a way he has not felt in years. Ranger lies on the rubber mat beside the table, his body stretched long, his muzzle resting between his paws, but his eyes never close. Every time one of the puppies squeaks, his ears lift. Every time Emily turns one over to listen with her stethoscope, Ranger raises his head just enough to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Caleb notices it, and the small ache in his chest grows deeper. This dog has spent the whole night doing what men write promises about and too often fail to do. Emily glances at Ranger's collar, then at Caleb. That tag is military, she says softly. Caleb does not answer at first. The fluorescent lights hum above them. Somewhere in the back room, an old wall clock ticks with patient certainty. Caleb reaches down and turns the worn metal tag between his fingers again. Read. K9 unit. The letters look like they were scratched by time itself. I knew a read, Caleb says at last. His voice comes out lower than he expects. Emily slows her hands, but keeps working. Close. Caleb looks at Ranger, and the dog looks back as if the answer belongs to both of them. Closest thing I had to a brother. The words settle in the room without drama, heavy but clean. Emily nods once, the way people do in small towns when they know enough not to ask too much. She wraps the smallest puppy in a fresh towel and places it beside the others beneath the warm light. Then maybe this was not an accident, she says. Caleb almost smiles, but it never fully reaches his face. I stopped believing in accidents a long time ago. Ranger shifts at the sound of his voice, then slowly rises, stiff from smoke, rain, and exhaustion. He steps toward Caleb and presses his shoulder against the man's leg, not asking for comfort exactly, not giving it either, but sharing the weight of a memory both of them carry in different languages. Caleb lowers his hand to the dog's head. The fur there is damp, rough, and warm. For a second, the clinic disappears. He is back 5 years ago, in another place, under another sky, with the air full of heat and confusion, hearing Mason Reed laugh over the radio just hours before everything changed. Mason had owned a German Shepherd once, or at least he talked about one whenever the nights got quiet. A stubborn dog, he had said, smart enough to ignore dumb orders, loyal enough to make you feel ashamed of your own doubt. Caleb had never met that dog. He had only seen one small photo tucked inside Mason's Bible, a younger German Shepherd sitting beside a porch, ears too big, eyes too serious, one paw resting on a faded Marine Corps blanket. Now Caleb remembers the blanket under the barn hay, the one with the burned edge, the one with M, Reed stitched in dark thread. His hand stills on Ranger's head. That was yours, he whispers. Ranger's eyes lift. Emily hears him and turns. What was? Caleb swallows. The blanket. In the barn. It belonged to Mason. The room feels smaller suddenly, as if every wall has leaned inward to listen. Emily walks to the counter and opens the clear evidence bag where Caleb had placed the scrap of cloth before bringing the puppies inside. She unfolds just enough to reveal the stitching. M. Reed. The thread is faded, but the name remains. Ranger steps forward, nose trembling. He presses it gently to the cloth and closes his eyes for one quiet breath. Caleb feels something inside him bend, but not break. He has spent 5 years thinking his last connection to Mason was a memory he could not fix. Yet here, in a little veterinary clinic in Miller's Creek, with rain on the roof and 4 newborn lives under a heat lamp, the past has walked back into the room wearing smoke in its fur and loyalty in its eyes. Emily's face softens. Someone knew who he was, she says. Caleb looks toward the dark window, where his reflection stands beside Ranger's. Someone had him all this time. Ranger lets out a low sound, barely more than air, and moves back toward the puppies. He lies down close enough that his nose touches the smallest one's towel. Caleb watches the tiny pup nuzzle toward him, blind and trusting, and the question that has been building in his chest finally becomes clear. How did Mason's K9 end up locked away in a forgotten barn, guarding puppies no one else came back for? Outside, headlights sweep across the clinic window. A truck slows on the street, then continues into the rain. Caleb turns toward the glass, every old instinct waking quietly inside him. Emily follows his gaze. You expecting someone? She asks. Caleb does not look away. No, Ranger lifts his head. His ears stand sharp. For the first time since they reached the clinic, he gives a low warning growl, not loud, not wild, but certain. Caleb steps closer to the window and sees fresh tire tracks cutting through the wet gravel outside, leading past the clinic and back toward the county road. Whoever had driven by was not looking for help. They were looking to see what had survived. Caleb keeps one hand near Ranger's shoulder while the clinic settles into a silence that feels too aware of itself. The passing truck is gone, its red taillights swallowed by rain and darkness, but the tire tracks outside remain clear under the porch light, curved through the gravel like a question nobody wants to answer. Emily locks the front door and turns the small sign from open to closed, though it has been closed for hours. The click of the deadbolt sounds louder than it should. Ranger watches the window, body low, ears forward, amber eyes fixed on the black glass where the room reflects back in pale layers. Caleb in his wet jacket, Emily beside the exam table, for puppies beneath a pool of golden heat, and one old military tag hanging from a collar that should have led home long ago. Caleb takes out his phone and calls Deputy Aaron Mills, the only lawman in Miller's Creek who still answers after midnight, without sounding surprised. He gives the facts simply. Barn fire. Rescued animals. Military tag. Suspicious vehicle. Possible neglect. He does not say Mason's name at first. Some names require a quiet room. Some names feel like they should not be spoken until the living are ready to carry them. Aaron says he is on his way, and Caleb lowers the phone. Emily continues checking the puppies, but her hands have slowed. The smallest one keeps fighting the towel, making tiny pushing motions with its paws, as if even sleep feels too much like being held back. Ranger nudges it once with his nose. The pup quiets immediately. Emily notices and whispers, "That little one knows him." Caleb watches Ranger's face soften. They all do. Another gust of rain pushes against the windows, and for a second the clinic lights flicker. Caleb looks toward the back hallway where shelves of medicine, folded blankets, and stainless steel bowls line the wall in perfect rows. Everything here has a place. Everything here has a purpose. It makes the barn feel even worse in his memory. The broken boards, the locked side door, the old chain near the post, the way Ranger had refused to leave until every small life was counted. Caleb closes his eyes and sees the embroidered blanket again. Read. He opens them and steps toward Emily. "Can you scan him for a chip?" Emily nods and retrieves the handheld scanner from a drawer. It gives a soft electronic beep when she tests it in the air. Ranger does not move away when she kneels beside him. He allows the device to pass along his neck, over his shoulders, down one side, then the other. For a moment, there is only rain, breathing, and the low hum of the heat lamp. Then the scanner chirps. Emily looks at the small screen. Caleb does not ask. He cannot. Emily reads carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. Registered name, Ranger. Handler, Corporal Mason Reed. Secondary emergency contact, Caleb Walker. The room becomes still. Not quiet. Still. Caleb feels the words move through him like a door opening in an abandoned house. Secondary emergency contact. Mason had put his name there. Not a command. Not an order. A trust. Caleb lowers himself onto the wooden bench by the wall because his knees no longer feel dependable. Ranger steps toward him and rests his head on Caleb's thigh. The dog's weight is gentle, but it carries 5 years of unanswered grief. Caleb's hand finds the fur behind Ranger's ear, and his fingers tremble once before becoming steady. "He trusted me with you," Caleb says. Ranger closes his eyes. Emily looks away, giving him the dignity of a private moment in a public room. Outside, the sound of another engine approaches, slower this time, heavier, then stops in the gravel lot. Ranger's eyes open before anyone moves. Caleb stands. Blue and white lights flash once across the clinic wall as Deputy Aaron Mills pulls in, followed by a county fire truck returning from the farm road. Aaron enters with rain shining on the shoulders of his tin uniform, hat in hand, expression careful. He is a broad man in his 40s with tired blue eyes and the steady walk of someone used to arriving after damage has already happened. He looks at the puppies first, then Ranger, then Caleb. "Fire crew got the barn under control," Aaron says. "No people inside. They found a padlock on the rear door, burned through but still hanging." Emily's face tightens. Caleb looks down at Ranger, whose body has gone rigid. Aaron continues, softer now. "Property belongs to Dale Whitmore. He told dispatch the barn was empty." The smallest puppy whimpers under the heat lamp, and Ranger moves to stand between the table and the door. Caleb feels the old Marine part of him rise. Not angry, not loud, just clear. It was not empty. Aaron nods slowly. "I know." He removes a folded paper from inside his jacket, damp at the edges, but readable. Fire crew also found a metal food bowl, 3 old veterinary receipts, and a faded photograph pinned inside a tack room cabinet. "Looks like the same dog." Caleb takes the photograph with care. It is curled at the corners, smoke-stained and old. Mason Reed stands on a sunny porch in civilian clothes, grinning at the camera, one hand resting on a younger ranger's head. The same blanket lies over the porch rail behind them. Caleb stares until the image blurs. Mason had made it home once, at least in some small way. Ranger had known grass, sunlight, a hand that loved him, a name spoken kindly. Caleb looks at the dog now, older, tired, still guarding the living after all he has lost. Aaron says, "We will need statements." Caleb folds the photograph against his chest without taking his eyes off Ranger. "You will have them." Then, from beneath the warming towel, the smallest puppy lets out a stronger cry than before. Ranger turns immediately. Caleb follows. In that little sound, thin but alive, the whole room seems to breathe again. The storm outside begins to ease, the rain now a soft whisper against the clinic roof, and the night settles into a slower rhythm. Caleb crouches beside Ranger, letting his fingers trace the line of the dog's back, feeling the gentle rise and fall of each breath. The puppies are nestled close together under the warming lamp, eyes fluttering as they drift between wakefulness and sleep, their small bodies warming to life in the safety of the room. Caleb shifts slightly to reach the largest of the pups, brushing its damp fur from its amber eyes. Ranger's head lifts, just enough to see Caleb's motion, then rests again, as if giving permission. Outside, the world is wet, dark, and empty, but inside the clinic, the warmth is tangible, like a promise kept. Emily moves quietly, adjusting the heating pads and checking the thermometer readings, her hands steady but gentle, every movement calibrated to the delicate fragility of the pups. Caleb watches her for a moment, then glances toward Ranger. The dog lifts his chin slightly, ears twitching at each small whimper or shifting movement from the pups, ensuring that every life under his watch is accounted for. Caleb leans back against the wall, allowing the quiet to wash over him. The night is filled with subtle sounds, the soft hum of the heat lamp, the rhythmic beeping of the scanner, the faint breathing of the pups, and the gentle rise and fall of Ranger's chest. He lets his mind drift, remembering the early mornings in the field, the way Mason Reed had carried himself, the quiet moments between chaos, and the lessons he had learned from the friend who had always kept a calm center in the storm. Ranger shifts, moving closer to Caleb, pressing his warm body against his leg, and Caleb responds by resting his hand on the dog's head, feeling the strength and loyalty that has persisted through fire, rain, and neglect. The smallest pup stirs, making a soft squeak, and Ranger nudges it gently with his nose, encouraging it to settle again. Caleb watches, knowing that this dog has endured more than most humans could comprehend, and yet remains dedicated to the lives he protects. The warmth of the clinic, the dry floor beneath their paws, the soft towels wrapped around the pups, all contrast sharply with the wet, smoke-filled barn they had left behind just hours ago. Caleb reaches down to smooth the fur along Ranger's neck again, feeling the subtle tremor of muscles relaxing under his touch, and whispers, "You have done more than you know." Ranger lifts his eyes to meet Caleb's, the amber depths holding a story of patience, vigilance, and unwavering trust. Emily steps closer to place a fresh towel beneath the smallest pup, keeping it dry and comfortable, and Caleb notices the careful way she positions the others, arranging them like a caretaker would for a family long overdue for peace. The soft click of the clinic door signals the arrival of another gust of wind outside, and Ranger's ears lift in brief attention before returning to his watch over the pups. Caleb glances at the row of heating lamps, the gentle flicker of light reflecting off wet fur, and a small warmth spreads across his chest, a sense of relief mingled with awe at the quiet heroism present in the room. The night continues, calm yet alert, the storm outside having passed but the vigilance inside remaining unbroken. Caleb leans back further, letting his body rest against the wall, Ranger by his side, the puppies safe, and for the first time since the barn fire, he allows himself to breathe freely, acknowledging the bond that has been renewed, the lives saved, and the quiet promise that not one would be left behind, a promise that stretches from Mason Reed through Caleb to Ranger and the tiny lives he has protected. Morning comes to Miller's Creek without fanfare. just a pale line of gold pressing through the rain clouds and touching the wet windows of the clinic. Caleb wakes in the wooden chair beside the exam table, his neck stiff, his jacket still smelling faintly of smoke, one hand resting on Ranger's shoulder as if he had been afraid the dog might vanish with the darkness. For a few quiet seconds, he does not remember where he is. Then the smallest puppy squeaks under the heat lamp. Ranger's ears rise, and the whole night returns in pieces. Firelight, rain, Mason's name on metal, for trembling lives wrapped in towels, and the old photograph held against his chest like proof that love can leave a trail even after years of silence. Emily stands at the counter making coffee in a small machine that sounds too loud for the hour. Her hair is pulled back, her sleeves rolled to the elbow, her face tired but calm. Deputy Aaron Mills is outside near the gravel lot, speaking with the fire chief beside the county truck, both men holding paper cups and glancing now and then toward the clinic windows. The world has not fully woken, but the truth has begun to move. Caleb stands slowly, careful not to disturb Ranger, but the dog rises with him anyway. Ranger stretches once, then limps toward the puppies, checking each one with gentle precision. 1, 2, 3, 4. The count is the same. The miracle is still there. Emily brings Caleb a cup of coffee, black and steaming. They made it through the night, she says. Caleb looks at the pups, their small bodies now dry, their fur showing shades of sable and tan beneath the ash Emily has brushed away. Because of him, Caleb says. Ranger lowers his head to nudge the smallest one closer to the warmth. Emily watches him, her expression softening. Because of both of you. Caleb does not know how to accept that. Praise has always felt like a coat that does not fit right. He takes the coffee and steps toward the front window. Outside, the morning fields shine with leftover rain. Beyond the town road, mist clings low over the ditches and fences. Somewhere out there, a burned barn stands under a gray sky, stripped of shadow now, ready to tell what darkness tried to keep hidden. Aaron comes inside a few minutes later with mud on his boots and a folder tucked beneath his arm. He removes his hat before looking at the puppies, a small act of respect that Caleb notices. We spoke with Whitmore, Aaron says. Emily's jaw tightens at the name. Ranger lifts his head from the mat. Caleb turns from the window. Aaron chooses his words carefully. He claimed Ranger wandered onto the property months ago, said he had no idea about the tag, the chip, or the pups. Caleb does not interrupt. He has learned that lies often sound smoothest when they are allowed to finish walking into the room. Aaron sets the folder on the counter and opens it. But the receipts tell a different story. Veterinary visits 2 years back under Dale Whitmore's account. Dog listed as Ranger. Notes say former service dog, transferred after owner deceased. The coffee in Caleb's hand cools untouched. Emily closes her eyes briefly, and when she opens them, they are sharper than before. So he knew. Aaron nods. He knew. Ranger moves closer to Caleb, not hiding, not afraid, simply present. The smallest puppy crawls awkwardly over its sibling and lets out a determined little sound, as if objecting to the heaviness in the room. For the first time since the fire, Caleb almost laughs. It breaks something open, not wide, not loud, just enough for air to get through. Aaron slides a second item from the folder. It is a copy of a county record, creased and faintly stained. There is more, he says. After Corporal Reed passed, Ranger was supposed to go to his listed emergency contact if no family member could keep him. That contact was you. The transfer never happened. Caleb looks down at the paper. His name is there in faded ink, clear as day, Caleb Thomas Walker. The room tilts, not from shock, but from the ache of time stolen without asking. 5 years. 5 winters. 5 summers. 5 years Ranger should have been sleeping beside a warm door instead of standing watch in a forgotten barn. Caleb feels anger rise, but it does not roar. It settles deep, hard and quiet, like a stone placed in a river. He folds the paper carefully and hands it back to Aaron. What happens now? Aaron closes the folder. The county will open a neglect case. The animals stay here under protective hold until the paperwork clears. After that, if you want a petition for custody, I do not think anyone will stand in your way. Caleb turns toward Ranger. The dog is watching him with those steady amber eyes, the same eyes Mason must have known, the same eyes that had looked back into the fire and refused to run. Caleb kneels in front of him. The clinic grows quiet around them, as if Emily, Aaron, the puppies, the rain, and the waking town all understand that some promises need room. Caleb touches the old tag at Ranger's collar, then rests his palm against the dog's chest. "I should have found you sooner," he whispers. Ranger leans forward and presses his forehead against Caleb's shoulder. No accusation, no bitterness, just recognition, just return. Caleb closes his eyes, and for one breath he feels Mason there too, not as a wound, not as smoke, but as something gentler, standing in the quiet space between a man, a dog, and the lives they are still able to save. By late morning, the rain has almost stopped, leaving the air crisp and clean with the smell of wet earth and distant hayfields. Caleb steps out of the small clinic and stretches his legs, letting the cool air brush against his damp jacket. Ranger follows closely, alert yet calm, his paws silent against the gravel as he checks every corner, ensuring no threat remains. The puppies are nestled inside, eyes half open, occasionally lifting their heads to sniff the fresh air filtering through the screen door. Caleb squats beside Ranger and runs his hand along the dog's back, feeling the subtle tension loosen with every breath. He thinks of Mason, of the mornings they had spent talking quietly over maps and radio signals, of laughter that once carried through the barracks like sunlight. Ranger shifts slightly, leaning into Caleb's hand, a silent agreement that the past and present now coexist in this moment. Emily emerges from the clinic doorway with a tray of water bowls for the pups, setting them carefully on the porch while checking the heating pads inside one last time. Caleb nods to her, a gesture of gratitude and understanding that words are unnecessary here. The small family remains still for a moment, listening to the distant hum of traffic on the county road, the soft cooing of birds returning after the storm, and the faint dripping of water from roof gutters. Caleb notices the smallest pup, already attempting to stand and wobble toward Ranger, who lowers his head gently, letting the pup nuzzle under his chin, a protective gesture that seems to say, "I will watch over you now." The larger puppies stir, stretching and yawning, bodies warming beneath towels and blankets, and Ranger rises slowly, moving to position himself near the door, ears rotating at every sound outside, still vigilant, but no longer tense. Caleb breathes deeply, feeling the weight of relief settle in his chest. There is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that life, fragile and small, persists despite neglect, storm, and fire. He bends to pick up one of the puppies, feeling its tiny heartbeat against his palm, and places it beside Ranger, who nudges it closer with a soft, reassuring nudge. Emily observes silently, a small smile forming as she watches the scene unfold. Caleb looks around the porch, taking in the morning light reflecting off wet grass, the distant hills, and the clinic building that has become a sanctuary for this group. Ranger lies down finally, chin resting on his front paws, eyes half-lidded yet alert, while the puppies curl against him and one another, a soft cluster of warmth and trust. Caleb sits back on the bench, watching, absorbing, and allowing the moment to stretch, feeling the steady rhythm of life resuming. He reflects on the events of the past night, on the resilience of a dog that refused to abandon his charges, and on the unspoken bond that ties humans to animals, courage to compassion, and past to present. The sky above is clearing, the sun beginning to push through the gray, glinting off puddles and wet leaves, signaling the start of a day filled with possibility. Caleb reaches out again, resting a hand on Ranger's shoulder, feeling the pulse of loyalty and quiet bravery beneath his fingers. The puppies, now more confident, explore the immediate surroundings, sniffing at grass and mud, their tiny tails wagging with the innocence and curiosity of lives given a second chance. Caleb watches every small movement, every hesitant sniff, every tilt of a head, understanding that these simple acts carry weight beyond measure. Ranger lifts his head once more, amber eyes meeting Caleb's, and Caleb feels a current of shared understanding pass between them, a confirmation that all those who were abandoned, forgotten, or overlooked can still find safety, love, and guidance. The clinic behind them hums with quiet activity, Emily tending to supplies, ensuring towels and pads are ready, keeping a vigilant eye on the recovered group. Caleb stands slowly, feeling the morning sun warm his back as he surveys the small sanctuary, noting every detail. The clean line of heating lamps, the organized trays of water, the small footprints left by the puppies on the damp porch. Ranger nudges Caleb again, urging him to move, to keep the day going, and Caleb smiles faintly, understanding that recovery, vigilance, and care are ongoing tasks. The bond formed in the shadows of a burning barn, in the rain and smoke of the night, continues in the soft light of dawn, steady and unspoken, a promise renewed with every breath, every glance, and every tiny movement of lives saved, watched over, and cherished. 3 weeks later, Miller's Creek looks nothing like the night Caleb first brought them in. The fields have dried beneath a clean blue sky, the gravel roads have turned pale again, and the old burn smell has finally lifted from the edge of town, carried away by wind, rain, and time. The county has finished its investigation. The paperwork has passed from one desk to another, and Dale Whitmore's property has gone quiet under official notice and locked gates. Caleb does not drive by the farm anymore unless he has to. He has learned that some places do not need to be visited to be remembered. On a mild Saturday morning, he parks his pickup outside Carter Animal Care with a folded adoption folder on the seat beside him and Mason Reed's photograph tucked carefully inside his jacket pocket. The clinic porch is bright with sun, and someone has placed a pot of yellow marigolds beside the door. Ranger is waiting just inside the front window, sitting tall and still, as if he has known this day was coming long before any human sign to form. His coat has been brushed clean, the smoke-darkened patches nearly gone, and the old cracked collar has been replaced with a sturdy brown leather one. But the worn military tag remains. Caleb asked Emily to leave it there. Some things are not meant to be replaced. They are meant to be carried with more care. When Caleb opens the door, Ranger stands, and the puppies wake in a tumbling little wave from their padded bed near the counter. They are stronger now, round-bellied and bright-eyed, their paws too big for their bodies, their ears beginning to lift in uneven, ridiculous angles. Emily comes from the back with a clipboard in one hand and a smile she is trying to hide behind professionalism. They passed every check, she says. Healthy, loud, curious, and very convinced they own the building. One puppy grabs the edge of Caleb's bootlace and pulls with all the seriousness of a working dog twice its size. Caleb looks down and laughs softly, the sound surprising him with how easy it feels. Ranger watches from beside the bed, calm but proud, like a father allowing the world to admire what he already knows is precious. Deputy Aaron Mills arrives a few minutes later, not in a hurry this time, carrying a small cardboard box. He sets it on the counter and takes off his hat. Recovered from the tack room after the inspection, he says, "Thought you should have it." Caleb opens the box carefully. Inside are a few things that somehow survived smoke, neglect, and years of being forgotten. The corner of the Marine Corps blanket with him, Reed stitched in faded thread, a training whistle, a small photo of Mason with Ranger as a young dog, and a letter sealed in a plastic sleeve. Caleb's name is written on the front in Mason's handwriting. The clinic seems to grow quiet around him. Emily looks away toward the puppies. Aaron steps back. Ranger moves closer, his shoulder touching Caleb's leg. Caleb opens the letter with slow fingers. The words are simple, written years ago by a man who must have believed tomorrow would keep its promises. Caleb, if anything ever happens and Ranger needs a home, I want it to be with you. He trusts steady hands. So do I. Caleb reads the lines once, then again, but the second time the letters blur. He folds the letter and presses it gently against his chest, not hiding the emotion, not fighting it. Ranger lifts his head and rests his muzzle against Caleb's hand. No ceremony could have been more complete. No speech could have said it better. By noon, the adoption papers are signed. Emily places the copies in a folder and slides them across the counter. "Officially yours," she says. Caleb looks at Ranger, then at the 4 puppies now wrestling with a towel near the exam room door. "No," he says quietly. "Officially family." That afternoon, Caleb drives them home. His house sits 5 miles outside town, a white farmhouse with a wide porch, a red maple in the front yard, and a flag moving gently in the warm wind. He has lived there alone for years, keeping rooms tidy and quiet, keeping grief folded away in drawers no one opened. But when he opens the truck door, silence is the first thing to leave. The puppies spill clumsily onto the grass, noses down, tails wagging, discovering clover, leaves, sunlight, and the wild miracle of space. Ranger steps down last. He stands in the driveway, still as a statue, staring at the porch, the open door, the clean windows, the shade beneath the maple. Caleb waits. He does not call him. He does not rush him. Some souls need to choose safety for themselves. After a long moment, Ranger walks forward. One step, then another. He climbs the porch stairs and stops beside the door. Caleb takes Mason's old tag from his pocket, the duplicate Aaron found in the box, and hangs it on a small hook beside the entrance, next to his own worn dog tags. Metal touches metal with a soft sound, not like an ending, but like something being set right. Ranger looks at the tags, then at Caleb. The smallest puppy wobbles up the steps and presses against Ranger's front leg. The others follow, one by one, until all four are gathered at the threshold. Caleb opens the door wider. Warm light spills across the floorboards. Ranger steps inside first, then turns back to make sure the puppies are coming. 1, 2, 3, 4. Caleb follows them in, and for the first time in years, the house does not feel empty. That evening, as the sun lowers behind the fields, Ranger lies on the porch with the puppies asleep against his side, their little bodies rising and falling in peace. Caleb sits beside them in an old wooden chair, Mason's letter resting on the table near a cup of coffee gone cold. Fireflies begin to blink in the grass. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rings 6 times across the quiet county air. Caleb reaches down and rests his hand on Ranger's head. "You brought him home," he whispers. Ranger's eyes close, calm at last. Caleb looks at the fading light, at the tags by the door, at the puppies safe beneath the evening sky, and understands something he could never have learned from medals or memorials. Some promises travel through years of darkness before they find the right porch. Some prayers are answered without thunder, without angels, without words. Sometimes grace arrives tired, smoke-stained, and stubborn, standing in the doorway of a burning barn, refusing to leave until every soul is saved.